Thank you everyone for joining us for NSM First Gen Grad School panel. This is the first time we have a panel full of First Gen students, alum that have come to Cal State Fullerton, graduated, and are now pursuing their PhDs across the country. So we're going to have them introduce themselves in a set. Thank you all for being here and for joining us, and for our speakers and our panelists for being here today as well. We're really excited to hear your stories. So
Tatiana, I don't know if right now I see your notes page with the notes. Did you want that one? The other
stop
screen?
sharing. Sorry, I've never done like a dual share screen. How do I do this?
I think you can press the swap. I think the swap feature, and it'll
What now?
Yeah, that one works. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. So yeah, thank you again for joining us for First Gen Grad School panel. We're going to have a few Cal State Fullerton alum talk about their stories in a second, and we're going to kind of dive in and ask questions. At the end, we'll have a chance for y'all to ask questions. So please have them ready to go. If you want, you can also use the chat feature we have at the bottom of the page or of your screen. We do ask that you keep yourself on mute during the panel and while your panelists are sharing. And again, you feel free to use the chat if you want to ask any questions, say hello, exchange any information. And again, we're recording this presentation, so students that aren't able to join us today will be able to watch later. And I do have to make a plug. This is our NSM Student Success team. That's me at the end. My name is Tatiana Pedroza. I'm Assistant Dean for the College of Natural Sciences and Mathematics. And we might have Sam and maybe Brittany here with us today, if you want to do a quick shout out.
Hi.
That's Sam Pedroza. He's our graduation specialist.
Yes, graduation specialist. Good to see everyone here.
And I think I saw Brittany. Are you in the room?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So good to see you all. It's good to be here. Yes, I serve as the retention specialist for the college. So I work with our first and second year students, primarily on general education and then just registration support and any questions you have about advising.
Awesome. Thank you. And I believe we have Natalie. Is Natalie in the room? Natalie Muir. She's our college advisor. And I'll hand it over to Shonda to introduce herself.
Can I just introduce me? Yeah, introduce yourself. So I am just the career specialist here that can help you with any career needs. I think it's another a student, Natalie. Never, not our Natalie here. Yeah. Welcome, everyone.
And thank you. And again, we're your student success team. So if you have any questions, we're here to support you along your journey in undergraduate or graduate careers. We could definitely help you through advising when it comes to like general education or Cal State Fullerton policies. So we have your specialist for that, as well as Natalie, our college advisor, and then Shonda, who specializes in career advising as well. And I kind of more cover a lot of like policies right now, where we have a lot of meetings regarding like withdrawals, or if you have any questions about getting involved in clubs and organizations on campus, just basically anything in between. So feel free to reach out. I'll put my contact in the chat so you have it. But thank you all for joining us today. And here's a lot of our contact info. So if you want to go ahead and follow us on Instagram, our Instagram account for the college is at CSUF-CNSM. And then our Instagram for the Student Success Center is at NSM_SSC. The NSM Student Success Center is also located and open. We're here in person in McCarthy Hall, MH 488. So if you take the escalators all the way up to the 4th floor, make a left and another left, or down the hall. And then you can also contact us via email at nsmsuccessteam@fullerton.edu. We do partner really closely with our clubs and organizations. So we do have the NSM Interclub Council that is also our connection to student clubs. And they just hosted fall festivities last week for those of you that were able to join. It was really fun. We'll have more events throughout the year, including NSM Week in the spring too. So who is exactly a first generation college student? So the university actually is the first time we are celebrating officially throughout Cal State Fullerton our first gen students. And the way that they're defining this is a student that is first in their family to attend or graduate from college. But you could also be considered first gen if you meet one of the other criteria that they've listed here. So if you want to, if your parents or guardians went to trade school, if they went to community college and took classes, if they went to community college and have an associate degree, if they graduated, your siblings graduated from a four-year university, or your parents or guardians received a four-year degree from another country. So if they follow under any of these, and you yourself are a first-time at Cal State Fullerton college student, you're still first gen. So we still consider our students that are attending Cal State Fullerton and in our classes first gen students. I myself am a first gen student, super proud about that. Our panelists are going to be sharing their first gen stories today with us. So specifically math and sciences too, which is really great. So can't wait to hear about that. And then one more thing to kind of give you a background, right? Like, where does this first gen concept come from? So November 8th was selected for the day for the National First Gen College celebration to honor the anniversary of the Higher Education Act of 1965. And much like other hallmark legislation in that era, like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, this act was intended to help level a playing field to honor that has long been weighed against Americans from minority or income backgrounds. So a lot of underrepresented students, first gen students, might have really, different backgrounds from others that have traditionally been able to have access to higher education. So this motion was passed so that others could have access. So it's all about access. It's all about representing or having representation, right, of undergrad students, celebrating, right, what a first gen student is. It also helped establish a lot of potential funding throughout the nation for things like TRIO programs or other programs to help gain access for low income, underrepresented, and first gen students. Again, we celebrate this, right? This is like the first time we're officially celebrating this at Cal State Fullerton. So we're super proud to partner with them in this. And we know, especially, right, for first gen students and underrepresented students are especially impacted in the STEM fields. So we're going to be talking about this a lot more today. We also know, right, that systemic changes are really hard and they take a really long time, right? So even though that act was passed in 1964, 1965, we're still seeing those gaps, right, of achievement between underrepresented students, first gen students, and low income students in higher education. So even though systemic change is hard, right, we want to focus on what we could do in the short term, and for our students that are first gen, right, what we could do to really celebrate you, right, and to help relieve a lot of those impacts on the day-to-day. So something to think about. So how do we maintain our identity and individuality in a world so rigidly defined at times, especially when it comes to, being first in your family to attend college? And so we did come up with some self-affirmations. So things to maybe focus on as you're, maybe thinking through our panelists and their stories, but then also for yourself, right? So some self-affirmations that we came up with here is: one, you belong here. I belong here, you belong here, right? Cal State Fullerton is your home, right? NSM is your college, and you belong here, right? So if you ever question that, this you could tell yourself, right? At this times, especially midterms, finals are coming up. I know it's hard. Keep telling yourself, right? I belong here, I belong here. Another affirmation, right? The university needs you, right? The university needs you in these spaces, right? That's how change is created. And that you might be doing this for you and your family, right? It's not just you that might be in your classes, right? It takes a village, right? And it also takes, those goals and the long-term goals for you and your family. And then also, right, academic success doesn't define me. So even though you might be struggling, right, it might be a really hard time right now, whether or not you feel like you're succeeding in your classes, or whether or not you're getting that A, right? That doesn't define who you are as a person. So please keep that in mind. And then finally, I'm creating new paths for others like me, right? You're paving the way as a first gen student. Maybe, you're all three of those things, right? First gen, low income, and underrepresented. You're creating that path, right, for others like you. So just some things to think about, some self-affirmations to keep in mind. Finally, we will go ahead and introduce our great panelists. So welcome, Erica, Janice, and Isaac. Thank you all for being with us. They are across the country right now, so we're going to have them introduce themselves. If you could please say your name, maybe where you're from, and who do you want to give a shout out to? So family, friends, whoever. And then what year did you graduate Cal State Fullerton and from which program? I'll pass it off to Janice.
Hi everyone, I'm Janice. I am originally from California, obviously. I think most people that go to Fullerton usually are. I did my degree in biochemistry and I worked in the labs of Dr. Meyer, which I don't think he's there anymore, and then Dr. Capitopola. Yeah, I am currently at UPenn getting my PhD in biochemistry. And then just a little bit about me is my parents immigrated from Mexico. Yeah, they've always like supported me. I like remember wanting to like go kind of like far away for my bachelor's, and they were like, no, I don't think you can afford it. We can't afford it. And I ended up choosing Fullerton, and honestly, like I'm so grateful that I stayed and like lived with my parents and went to Fullerton because there was like so many opportunities when I was there, and I feel like it's only gotten better since I left. I was in the MARC program there, and that really helped me get to where I am today. So I wanted to shout out Dr. Amy Beth Cohen. She is still my mentor and like helps me with my problems even now in graduate school. Yeah, yeah, I think that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Isaac?
Hey everyone, my name is Isaac Maguianes. I'm I'm originally from Anaheim, California. I also went to Cal State Fullerton. I graduated in 2017, I believe, and I graduated from the geology department. So I started my academic journey as a geologist, but primarily because I was interested in paleontology, which is sort of a mixture of biology and geology. And now I'm at the University of Chicago, where I'm in an evolutionary biology program where I get to mix the two. And yeah, I guess I want to just give a quick shout out to my parents, to my advisors at Cal State Fullerton. Dr. James Parham he teaches like intro geology courses, so some of you may have come across him. But he was sort of the person who got me interested in science, because I didn't start off as a scientist. I started off in English because I really liked writing and I wanted to be a teacher, and eventually found my way after taking some intro courses. I was also part of the LSAMP program, and that helped me a lot because it steered me in the direction of finding support through different opportunities, whether they were for funding, whether they were for internships or stuff like that. It was really instrumental in me sort of learning how to navigate the academic space. So yeah.
Thank you. Erica?
Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Ward. I'm also from Orange County. I'm born and raised here. Would like to live here forever if I could. We're working towards it. And I graduated from Cal State Fullerton in 2020. So Zoom University year. And I got my bachelor's degree in applied math. Well, so in the math department, and then with a concentration of applied math / computation / modeling. And really, I just want to give a shout out to my professors in the math department. They were just awesome. I feel like I really enjoyed going to school and to classes, and like the atmosphere was so great there. Like I feel like they genuinely cared about each and every one of their students, and I feel like they worked so hard to help us be as successful as possible. Also, Project Raise, which I think is happening again. Project Raise R, like, I don't know, they got a new grant. I think that they're carrying over. Hopefully it's the same thing. And so in Project Raise, I met a lot of people like Tatiana and Shonda actually. And yeah, so shout out to you guys. Thanks for helping me get here.
Oh, thank you so much. We'll pass it on to Shonda.
Okay, so the next question, we could keep the same order. Can you share a little bit about your family background? Denise, Isaac, and then Erica.
Hi. So my parents immigrated from Mexico, like in the 80s, I want to say. And then, they like got their citizenship, and I don't think they thought that they were going to stay here, but, I think they just did. And then they started a family, and, like no one in my family other than my parents like immigrated to the States. So like growing up, it was always just like my parents, me and my brother. And so like I think that has played a pretty big role in like me moving away was really hard for me, because it almost felt like a part of the family was not there all the time, and I always felt like I was a little bit torn between like moving away. But I didn't get into any graduate schools in California, so kind of had to do this. But anyway, yeah, my mom, she does hair. She does my hair. And my dad is a pest control tech. And I really feel like that's important to mention, because like for me, like at Fullerton, maybe like saying that stuff, it wasn't that hard to say. Like, most of us, it's a Hispanic serving institution. So like most people like were like me. But now that I'm at Penn, which is like an Ivy League, like now I have to say that a little bit more proudly, because like, even though they like, my parents went to college in Mexico, they obviously like immigrated and then couldn't do that here. And so I'm like incredibly proud of like their success since coming to the States, and like how they, always told me like, just go to school, like whatever you do, just go to school, do like that is going to be the way that you make it. And that's what we work so hard for you to do. Like, I'm sure you guys can relate to that. Yeah. And, yeah, that kind of just sums it up.
Yeah, similar to Janice, my parents also immigrated from Mexico. So my parents came separately and then met each other here, and had me and my younger brother. And I think similarly, again, one of the things that I noticed when I moved away from California, I went to go do my master's at the University of Florida, and then came to the University of Chicago for my PhD. Being at an R1 institution, I kind of also realized that like my experience wasn't as the experience that I had at Fullerton of feeling like I was amongst people who were like me. That was also not the case when I came to sort of bigger R1 institutions, where there were students who were from various backgrounds coming in. And my parents, my dad's a plumber, self-employed plumber, and my mom has worked cleaning houses, helping people. She's done a bunch of odd jobs. Like growing up, she always had 2 or 3 jobs. But yeah, so for me, coming from that kind of background, I always remember my parents similarly telling me, if you want to get out, if you don't want to have to work like me, if you don't have to want to depend on physical labor the way me and your dad do, my mom would always tell me, the way you get out is through school. And so in some ways, I kind of knew that going to college, going to university could bring these kinds of benefits, but I also had no idea how to do that, because my parents didn't come from that, and my older sister went to a trade school, and so it was kind of a thing where they were pushing me in a direction that no one really knew what the landscape looked like. But I'm really glad that although they weren't able to help me directly through that, they definitely helped me in the sense that they instilled in me a drive to work hard. And even if there's moments where I feel like I'm not the best or I'm not the smartest person, they always told me, show up, just show up. If you show up and you feel like you did a horrible job, you did what you needed to do. You showed up, and yeah, so that's a little bit about my family.
I feel like I kind of have a different family background from you guys. So I have 2 older sisters. I'm the baby of the family. My dad was from here, also like Southern California, and my mom was from Korea. And so like my dad met her over there in the Air Force, and they moved back here and had my 2 older sisters and me. And she actually, they ended up separating, and then she ended up passing away, which was kind of difficult for me to deal with at a young age. But I fully attribute going through all of that as like one of the reasons why, like, I don't know, like I have this like perseverance and strength today. And also, like, I love my family, but I've also grown up like very independent from them. Like I realized throughout most of my like college experience and things like that, like they were all very self-motivated. I don't know exactly what it was, because in high school I was like not a great student, but sometime in community college I was like, oh man, I have to pay for this. And I had started working already when I was like 17 just to support myself. So I was like, well, maybe I should take it seriously. And then the switch kind of flipped. I was like, like getting A's feels nice, like doing well feels good. And then I kind of made like my own community out of like friends that I met at school and professors and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. So pros and cons to being a little bit independent from your family, but.
Okay, and you have your chosen family too, right? And it could be blood, it could be chosen family. So thank you all for sharing that. I feel like it establishes, you know, kind of maybe other students, what they're going through and things that they're experiencing too. As the first person to attend college in your family, what was the experience like at maybe Cal State Fullerton, or as an undergrad, or if you transferred maybe to classes at a community college? What was that experience like? Like how were you able to navigate that? Janice, if you want to go ahead and start again.
So I almost feel like undergrad was so far away. I'm like, let me think about this. So I graduated in 2018. I don't think I mentioned that before. So I'm a 4th year in my PhD, and I wasn't also that great in school in high school. Like I took a couple AP classes, but I don't think I was ever like that great. And then I went, enough to get into Fullerton. And then I think it was really at Fullerton that I also just like the community, and like I just wanted to experience college. And so I started meeting people, and I think I joined like this like honor society, and the president of that honor society became my friend, and she was like already doing research. She was like a little bit older than me, and she was like, I think you'd be really good at research. And I was like, okay, like what do I need to do? And I just like went to the lab, and the person like Dr. Meyer like was like, sure, you can join. And then like I just started doing stuff like scooping cells, and like I don't know why I enjoyed that stuff, but I think that it was so new to me, and the fact that like people trusted me to do this stuff when I knew nothing. I was literally taking like Gen Chem or something. Like I felt important, and I think that like people just kept like giving me responsibilities and encouraging me to like apply to things. And I was like, I don't have anything to apply to these things for. But like the thing is at Fullerton, like they want you to apply even though you don't have the experience. It's like these are all experiences for people that are trying to break through into like research, or like become president of a club, or like this is like your time. Like they honestly kind of don't care if you don't have the experience. And the great thing is like I started, I think like in my sophomore year, I had like my first summer research experience, and like they paid me a little bit. And then from there they were like, apply to Mark. And so like I just kept getting involved, and until it just like became who I am. Like actually, and I always like to tell this story, like when I applied to Mark, I was really nervous about it. Like I was like, this just sounds like too much of a commitment. I don't know if I want to do a PhD. Like I just, I didn't believe in myself. But everyone around me, like the master students in my lab, were telling me, just do it. Like you'd be great. Like, this is the next step for you. And so, yeah, I did it, and I got in. And so I guess like what I would say, like, just whatever it is that you do, like if you change majors or whatever it is, like just explore and utilize the resources at Fullerton, because I think that's your time to figure out what you want to do with your career and how to get there.
Thank you. Isaac?
Yeah. So I think my experience as an undergrad was definitely a lot of growth. So going from high school to college was a pretty big step up, because suddenly I had a lot more responsibilities and I was managing a lot more. I got my first sort of real job probably like tail end of senior year. And so by the time that college came by, which was, that window's like what, 3 or 4 months after graduating from high school, all of a sudden I was trying to balance work and school, and going from that to suddenly realizing that I was becoming more and more involved in my undergrad was sort of a growing process, because um, I don't know if I ever feel like I really took like a direct step into academia that I recognized. I feel like I just kind of fell into it, where suddenly once I started doing geology, my advisor was like, "Oh, you should think about doing this. You should think about doing that." And he told me at one point, he's like, "Hey, I can pay you for some of this stuff, and you can work here instead of, I was making smoothies at Jamba Juice." He's like, "You don't have to make smoothies at Jamba Juice if you don't want. You can sort of take a step in this direction." And at the moment, I was kind of just like, "Oh, sure." Like, I don't necessarily enjoy putting on an apron and washing dishes for 5 or 6 hours, but it went from that to, it's funny, like I think about it now and I'm like, wow, that was actually a really good experience, because it showed me that although some of these steps can seem scary, they're not always like the biggest steps. Sometimes something as small as like taking a chance on like, well, I have an opportunity to work on campus, or there's this program, either Mark or LSAMP or Raise, that's offering sort of opportunities to stay on campus more frequently, and through that I'm having more conversations with other students and faculty and staff and administration. Like it's a thing that just kind of like it's hard to see it in the moment, because in the moment everything feels so big, but taking those little steps can really sort of position you in a place where all of a sudden you're like, wow, I've spent 2 years in this really good program that has prepared me. And you start applying for whatever internships, RUs, graduate school, and you may think initially, oh, I don't have a lot to offer, I've only done my undergrad. But then if you have these programs, if you've been involved, if you've been attending these kinds of seminars or something, you suddenly realize like, oh no, yeah, I have like 2 years experience in Mark, or I've been a student and at what was at one point STEM squared. But for me, like that was one thing that I was like, oh, I didn't realize that I had done peer mentoring for like 3 years. And now whenever I go to apply for things and I'm looking for like broader impacts things, I'm like, oh, I want to work with students and I have 3 years worth of experience in peer mentoring. People are like, whoa, that's pretty good. And so I guess it's similar to Janice, but don't be afraid to grow. Don't be afraid to just take these small steps that bring you closer, or put you sort of in closer proximity to whatever it is you want to do. So if that's graduate school, that's great. If it's industry, if it's something else, just sometimes just getting a chance to show up more frequently is enough to really give you a good base to build on. So my experience was a lot of growth. I was slowly becoming an adult, and I didn't really realize it until it was too late. And now I'm an adult.
Thank you, Isaac. Erica?
It's never too late to realize you're an adult. I still feel like I'm still becoming an adult still. So I don't know if that ever ends. My college experience, so I started in community college, and one of my older sisters actually was going to community college at the same time. She had started just a little bit before me, and so I just bombarded her with questions. I was like, how do you do FAFSA? How do you do all of these things? Like register for classes? Like, what is this? To the point where I like annoyed the heck out of her, and she was like, leave me alone, figure it out yourself. And I was like, okay. So after I got my associates in math, at that point already, I was talking to the professors more and just reaching out to them and saying like, hey, like, I don't know, like, I just really liked school and like the learning process itself, which I don't know how unique that is, or if a lot of people feel like that. But I remember reaching out to one of my math professors and being like, hey, I think what you do is really cool. Like, how did you get there? And I kind of laugh, we laugh about it now, we're friends now. But yeah, like, who goes up to a math professor and is like, hey, that's what I want to do in the future. But anyway, he was super supportive about it. And that's how I didn't know what to pick to major in. And I just knew that, I don't know, like, I liked math, and I just kind of went with it and ran with it. And, you know, here I am in a PhD program. So definitely, like the others are saying, like, don't like count yourself out of the race before you even try, you know. And then so transitioning to Cal State Fullerton, I didn't have anybody like my sister to really bug so much for questions. But what I did instead was I just asked help from everyone, like everywhere. And I think that that's a skill, like, in and of itself, is like putting your pride or your ego or whatever it is to the side and just saying like, hey, like, I don't know this and I need help, right? Like, the worst thing somebody can do is tell you, oh, I don't know either. But, you know, then it's like, check, like, you're still closer to finding out whatever you need. And so a lot of the places that I would go to, like, for help, so I was in Project Raise. And so I had a peer mentor through that program. So I would ask her tons of questions. Project Raise connected me to Tatiana and Shanda, and I could ask them a bunch of questions. And so I feel like as I don't know, as like my academic career kind of progressed, I don't know, I just started making more relationships with like professors and even staff members, and just like sharing them with like what my experiences were and things like that. And I think that that's something that's really key for me personally, right? Coming from, you know, I don't know, I guess a more disadvantaged background, was I just asked everybody for help. Like, and so networking was so important for me. And I feel like networking sounds scary, by the way. Like, when I first was like, oh, I have to network, like it seemed like a lot more than really just talking to people. Just go talk to people, ask people questions. And yeah, and then I was at Project Raise. I was like, man, I like doing, you know, I like this. Like Angela at the time, who was a coordinator, told me, hey, you should be a peer mentor. And I was like, no, I'm not ready for it. I don't know. And she was like, what are you talking about? So I did it like a year later, and I was still juggling some jobs. And then I got into Graham, which is kind of like the math equivalent to Mark. Unfortunately, I think their grant ran out. And so I don't know if they're going to do something similar, but Mark, I think, is a good route if you want to do research. And I think they pay you, right? Do they pay you a little bit? Yeah. And so it was similar with Graham, where I could finally, I like picked up a couple jobs at school. So I was doing like, I was an SI leader, and then with peer mentoring and Graham, I didn't have to work off campus anymore, which saved me so much time. And that ended up being so important during my upper division classes. And Project Raise and Graham kind of showed me, like, helped me either through like seminars and workshops and things like that, but like they helped me prepare for grad school. And so I did a summer RU at Cornell. I didn't even know what an RU was until it was time to apply to them. And so you really you take everything for what it is. And I remember feeling like, oh man, like, you know, I can't do this. Like, why would anybody pick me to do this? And like, really, it's, even till now, like, any application process is totally worth it. Like, just apply, because you never know, like, just because you don't think you're qualified, you're your own worst critic, right? Like, somebody else probably does.
Thank you. Shanda, I'll pass it on to you.
Now going on to graduate school. I know you all mentioned already the school that you're attending, but if you could remind us again where you're currently attending. And I usually try to tell students, like, picking grad school is very different from undergrad. So if you could kind of share with us, like, why you chose to attend your specific grad program. Yeah, and then we can do the same order.
So when I was in the MARC program, they would like make us attend a SACNAS conference every year that we were in MARC. And so what I did is I was like, I can't talk right now. And I went like through every aisle of the conference, and I talked to every booth. Like that's how excited I was to like, it was kind of like picking like, where can I live, and also like, but how do they treat me, and like just like getting all the information that I wanted from these booths. And then after that, I made my list of like summer research programs, and then the next year I also made my list for the grad schools, and I think I did like 5 in California and 5 out of state. Um, and I got interviews at like all of the out of state ones. And then I only got one interview at UC Davis, and like I didn't get in. And I think that has to do, maybe it's changed, but like maybe they also want to increase diversity. And so like the East Coast schools were like, oh, cool, like this is a they bring something different. Um, but what I really liked about my interview is like, I think my first or second interview was Penn, but the the recruiter that I met at SACNAS, he was the one that told me, like, he left his card on my poster, and then he was like, oh, come talk to me. And I flipped it, and it was UPenn, and I was like, there's no way I'm like eligible to apply to an Ivy League. So I went to the booth and I talked to the guy. Well, that guy eventually became my PI when I came to Penn. And so yeah, like attending those conferences, if you can, if you want to go into graduate school, I think is really important, because you meet the people that are recruiting, people that, like, he was a professor, he was like a big name at my school. But another reason that I also chose Penn is that during the interview process, they like really try to woo you. So like they pay for all your food, they pay for your hotel, they pay for all your Ubers. But then like I also got to see like that the graduate students were just drinking a beer with their professors. And like I was very young, so like seeing that you can just call them by their first name instead of like Dr. K or Dr. Capitopola, and that they would just want to hang out with you and not necessarily even like grill you about science. Like they were just talking about, like, they had just won the Super Bowl or something, and so like seeing that, I it's not something I saw at every school. And like how happy the students were, like all of that stuff actually does happen during the interview. You can ask them the hard questions, and I think you'll even kind of stand out if you ask like the grad students that stuff, because it goes to show that like you actually care about like the culture.
So I am currently attending the University of Chicago. I'm in the Committee of Evolutionary Biology, and it's one of the like many sort of evolutionary science departments that they have here. It's a like the way that they structure programs versus like committees is kind of weird. So it, it, it's a bunch of like evolutionary biologists doing like a bunch of really different things. But the main reason why I chose to attend graduate school is because I had advisors that were encouraging me, and in some instances like challenging me to give it a shot. I didn't necessarily have the intention of attending graduate school. I very much was sort of in the headspace of, once I'm done with school, I can sort of move on with my life and do other things. But it's kind of funny just how I've sort of continued doing this, and I've enjoyed sort of every step of the way. It's not that it's not hard, but I get to learn really cool things. I have access to a lot of really cool resources. And I specifically chose my program because, like Denise, I got along with the people. I For my PhD, I interviewed at 5 schools, and every school sort of had its own graduate student culture. Everyone was really nice, and again, everyone was like really trying to woo you and woo me and tell me sort of all the benefits. But there was something about the University of Chicago The campus was really beautiful. There was a lot of sort of local places that they were taking us to. I also got to stay in downtown Chicago while I was here, so I got to experience the city. It was very cold. I came with California winter wear, which basically is like a light jacket and like a fake winter coat, and it was like 30 degrees. So it was very, very cold. But despite that, I was able to really enjoy it. And yeah, I got along with the people. Also, the funding opportunity was really good. They basically guaranteed 5 years worth of funding with an option for a sixth, and that's internal funding, not counting anything external. So as graduate students, we spend a lot of time doing our research, but we spend about a third of that time applying for funding to do that research. And so knowing that I sort of had a funding locked in, I could still apply for all these other things, but I have funding locked in was very important for me because one thing that I learned while I was at Cal State Fullerton, and I also learned while I was at the University of Florida from my advisor there, was you should never have to pay for graduate school. There are tons of ways to find basically there's tons of ways to find yourself in a graduate program in which you are being paid to do your studies, and hopefully that compensation is adequate for the amount of work you're putting in, because that's another thing too, that as a graduate student you put a lot of work in, but sometimes you don't have to put all that work in, and it's important to learn how to say no as well. That's something I've learned. But yeah, I found myself here because I really enjoyed the people and there was good funding, and I also thought, like, Chicago's a really nice city. I could live here for 5-6 years, so yeah.
I second basically everything that Isaac and Janice had to say. Except I'm currently a PhD student at UCI. My graduate program, it's a really interdisciplinary program. It basically combines like math, computation, and biology all together. So like specifically I'm doing like math modeling of neural networks and things like that. And so to piggyback off of what Isaac was saying, the reason why I actually did end up deciding to do a PhD was because after I got an exam, I met my research advisor, Dr. Brubaker. Shout out Dr. Brew, he's awesome. If any of you math students are in here, definitely take classes with him, do research with him, he's great. But he was the one who told me originally, he was like, so I came to him and I was like, I think I just want to do my master's degree in math and be a professor at community college, because that's what I didn't really have any like role models of, people who were in STEM or anything. And I just kind of looked up to my professors because I don't know, like they were just nice, genuine people and they were making money. And that was really like my only requirement, right? Because like I was just trying to get out of like the situation that I was in to like make better for my family, right? And so I came to my professor, Dr. Brubaker, and I was like, hey, like I just want to do my master's, like I want to get in and out, whatever. And he goes, oh, do you know if you get a PhD, they'll pay you? And I was like, what? Like, what? I had no clue. So then at that point, it was like, all right, prep time, like PhD. And then I did my summer RU at Cornell. And actually, because of that experience, I was like, man, I don't know how I feel about these Ivy League schools. Like it really, it opened my eyes to like a totally new environment. And so I didn't even apply to any Ivy League colleges. I was like, I'd want to stay in California specifically. And so I applied to like literally only grad schools like along the West Coast. So like in Washington and Arizona and stuff. And thankfully I got into a few different ones in California. And ultimately I chose UCI because I liked the program. I had met some professors in it prior, and they seemed like nice, chill, genuine people. And so that was a big factor. Also, UCI offers discounted student housing. So that meant that I would be able to live here with my partner, who is also like my main support system, right? I didn't want to do long distance and all of that. That would have been like extra added stressors and things like that. But we were able to have our own apartment here, like right off campus. So anyway, it just kind of worked out like that. And it was just really convenient. And, you know, I used to think too, I think that this is important to say, I used to think that, oh, like, what if I make the wrong decision? Like, what if I choose the wrong grad school? But actually, Dr. Brubaker told me, he was like, this is the thing. There's no such thing as a making the wrong decision, right? Like, you're going to go into any of these options and you're going to do the best that you can. And, you know, you're going to make it work. Whether that means, you know, getting the PhD or leaving, if that's what, you know, what that leads to. But that definitely changed my perspective. And so, like, I don't regret choosing UCI, and I never have. And I don't think I would have regret choosing anywhere else either. So important to keep in mind.
I love that advice so much because I feel like I've been through the ringer and I feel like I've had moments where I want to quit my PhD, but you know, like I've gone this far, and even if you quit, even if you keep going, like everything that I've accomplished today, like I'm not going to be a failure, you know, like maybe also just because I've already finished Fullerton, but even then, like, you know, it, like, just keep going. There's no wrong decision.
Yes, thank you. And that kind of leads into our next question, right? Like, how has your experience been in graduate school? Is there anything you wish you knew before going to grad school? And I think that, Erica, you really touched on that right now. Virginia, do you want to add anything?
I have a lot to say on this, but I think I'll just keep it short and say, like, you know, like I've had to switch labs. I've had to, like, I almost feel like I haven't had my own project since Fullerton. Like, you know, like your first 2 years of your PhD, you take classes and you choose your lab. So you don't really do like anything that's like super, super important that you might publish in. And then like you know, I finally like joined my lab, and like then I had to switch. So like I still feel like there's something that I need to accomplish here. And um, I really liked what Erica said, because, you know, when I was feeling like I was going to quit, like I went to my career specialist and she was like, well, you know, if you want to go into this career, like you don't need a PhD, and you would get a master's and then just get work experience and make the same amount, blah, 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 blah. And so I realized, like, when I hit rock bottom, I was like, oh, there's still options for me, you know, like I'm not a failure. But then, you know, after like a lot of soul searching, I realized like I came this far, and like I had this dream of like, you know, I really like research. And for me, like the PhD is like, once I have that, like no one can take that away from me. It's like the highest level of education that you can get. And also, when I told my mom I was thinking of quitting, she cried. So I think that also helped me stay in. And so what I would say, if I wish I knew something before I come into grad school, is like, yeah, like what Erica said, just like, there's no wrong decision. Like, don't ever go into grad school or with your decisions thinking like I came here and like it's not what I expected, and like that's why I'm gonna quit. It's like, no, like you have the power to like make it the experience that you want. And like I had to actually switch labs twice because the first time like my PI left, I joined a new lab. It wasn't like the best environment for me. The mentorship style wasn't what I was looking for, and I was really not happy. And then I switched again, and like that was very hard for me to do. But again, like you make bad decisions. Like maybe I made a bad decision in choosing that lab, but like it doesn't matter. That's my experience. However long it takes me to get to where I want to go, like that's what it's going to take me. That's my journey.
Thank you. Isaac?
I think I definitely wish that one of the things I had known before going to grad school was sort of learning how to advocate for myself, because I think that that's one thing that like is really hard when you first show up at grad school, is you feel like, well, you know, just feel everything is brand new. There's not just it's not just your research, but there's all types of things. You're suddenly there's health insurance, there's payment, there's all these, you're trying to juggle classes, you're trying to do so many things at once. And I think that I feel like one of the things that was sort of really hard for me when I first got to graduate school was learning how to juggle all these things and learning how to ask for help. There was a lot of times where I felt that I should know this, like I should be good at knowing how to navigate healthcare. I should be good at knowing how to navigate even something as simple as like registering for classes can be very difficult. Like if you don't know why you have specific holds, and sometimes university may have holds that don't make any sense to you. You forgot to sign this one thing, or you forgot to check this one box here. Taxes is a really stressful season for me, because my university for some reason like has a really weird system where we don't get W-2s and we pay estimated tax payments, and it's just this whole thing where like there's so many things swirling around at once. And I think that if I had known that I could ask for help and I could say, hey, I am in need of assistance, I don't know how to do this by myself. If I had been more confident in that, I think I would have probably had a much stronger start. It took me a while sort of to settle into my project, and I feel that whereas a lot of my peers settled into something within the first year, I was still in my second year, like, I think I want to do this, and I think I want to do that. And now that I'm there, I feel like I'm doing well, like I hit the ground running once I sort of zeroed in on what I was interested in. But it took a little while because there was a piece of me that just was reluctant in asking for help. And it wasn't necessarily because I had a feeling like I could do it by myself even, but I felt like I should have had it by now. And I think that it took me a while to realize, oh no, it's okay if you don't. And in fact, most of your peers who seem to be doing really well are either doing really well because they are asking for help, or because they're or because they have some other type of assistance. They're seeking
Or they're
out.
faking it. Oh my
That too.
gosh. I
Yeah,
just
that
need to
too.
throw that out there. Yeah,
Yeah.
don't compare yourself to other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, Erica, good jump in right there for sure. Do you want to add anything else?
I just wanted to say that, yeah, always ask for help. Don't be embarrassed to ask for help. There was totally another point. Oh, I hear so many times as a student, when they go to graduate school, that they hit rock bottom, because I did too. I totally got to a point in my first year. I'm only in my second year, by the way. I got to a point in my first year where I was like, nah, I'm out. Like, I'm good. And I don't know, like the reason how I convinced myself to stay in was just, I think that I had proved to myself that I was capable of getting the PhD, and I wasn't going to let anybody get in my way after that point. So it didn't matter what was going on the outside. I was like, I'm doing the thing. Have confidence in yourself. It happens every time.
Yes, thank you. I did want to recognize the time. I know we have this scheduled till 4. So are our panelists okay with staying a little after 4? Yeah, okay. Maybe a couple more questions, and we also want the audience to be able to ask questions too. So if you have anything, feel free to start typing it in the chat, and we'll get to them in a couple minutes. Just a couple more questions. I know Isaac talked about this a little bit, but how did you pay for grad school, right? Like you mentioned, being told like you shouldn't pay, right? Is there any other, and we don't have to go in order again, but if there's anyone that wants to add to maybe how did you get financial aid or other funding to do your grad program?
Your program should pay you. And if your program doesn't give you guaranteed funding, there should be some sort of guarantee that after PI takes you on, that they'll pay you. Don't pay for grad school. Don't do it.
Yeah, I would add that so for all STEM programs, they should pay for your stipend, your health insurance, and like laptop and moving. So like they gave me $1,000 for moving, and then I got a little extra because I came from California. The only thing is that that's still not enough. And another thing is that also sometimes in chemistry programs, it's different. Like chemistry, for some reason, like it's more competitive and weird. So like if you're a chem major, just apply to like biochem programs is my advice.
Yeah, so similar to what Erica and Jenny said, yeah, that if you're in STEM, your program should be paying for you, and if not, then your advisor should have some sort of guaranteed funding. It's not. I would advise against sort of not having something like that sort of well laid out before you choose to attend a grad school. Yeah, like these are the kinds of questions I think that can be like very like scary to ask, because you feel like, oh, I shouldn't be asking these questions, because either it's like, you're brand new and you're like, will they get mad if I ask this, or it might even seem kind of rude to ask it like in the middle of something. I know that I felt that way. I was like, ah, should I be asking about money? But yes, always ask about it. Always ask sort of what the expectations are, how much you're getting, if you're getting move-in, money, if you're getting money for other types of resources, when it's coming, because that can be another thing too, is that when I first got to Chicago, I wasn't aware that there was going to be a sort of a lag in between my last paycheck from the University of Florida to my first paycheck in Chicago. And there was a good amount of time there where I was kind of nervous, and I ended up working at a museum, luckily, so that kept me like held over. But it was a situation where I was like, if I hadn't already secured this museum position that was just for the summer, I would have had about 2 or 3 months where I had no pay. And that can be really hard when you're trying to figure out how you're going to get to a new place or how you're going to move. All those kinds of things are always good to ask for. But yeah, usually your department too is like I know I don't know if it's the same for Erica and Janice, but like my department's always like, they're always looking for ways for students to like apply to other things. So like I frequently get like, hey, you qualify for this, apply for it if you want. You could choose to apply for it or not. But yeah, just always keeping sort of an ear to the different opportunities out there is always a good deal.
Awesome, thank you. And before we jump to the chat questions, this kind of one just to kind of wrap up, right? Like everything y'all been talking about. If you're looking back on your identities, right, either being first gen or, underrepresented in your fields, like how have these given you strength and help you succeed in your academics? Janice, do you want to start?
This one's kind of hard for me. I think I mentioned that. The only thing I can think of is like I still like lean on a lot on my parents for advice, like how to deal with people. Like I think my parents have had to deal with like I guess being a minority or racism in their own lives, being immigrants. And so not that I experienced that necessarily, but I am way more of a minority, or I feel it a lot more being at Penn compared to when I was at Fullerton. Like everyone looked like me. They didn't think I was Puerto Rican. They knew I was Mexican. So like I go to them for advice for everything, even academic. Like I think that they'll tell me they have really good life advice.
Thank you. Isaac?
So I think knowing that I come from my parents who are hard workers, and sort of knowing that my community finds a lot of strength, and we find a lot of strength in each other has helped a lot. One of the things that I've done since coming to Chicago is basically trying to find, okay, like where are the people who are like me? Where can I find community, not just inside the university setting, but like in the greater city? And one of the things that I've really enjoyed is, although I feel in some ways being in academia, which is somewhere where no one in my family has ever been, can be very isolating. It feels very good knowing that this isn't the only aspect of my character, and not the only aspect of my character or identity that I attend to. I take the time to go to the predominantly Latin American neighborhoods and go speak Spanish and go have good food and attend festivals if I can. I take the time to find other students here at the university who identify with, being again Latin American or being Hispanic. Like it's something that I have that gives me strength, and I think that comes from sort of how at least for in my experience, finding community is always something that I've done. So yeah, and you know, if that part of my life is going well, or I know I'm catering to that part of my life, it bleeds into other things, because school can't be the only thing you're doing. It can be really easy to burn out that way. You have to find a balance.
Thank you. Erica?
So I kind of touched on this before, but things that I went through when I was younger, definitely, I choose to have the perspective that, you know, these things made me stronger in turn because I, you know, overcame these things. And I think that just reminding myself of that is what helps me get through academics. And in terms of identity, I actually always struggled with my identity because I'm biracial. So like, I never felt white enough to be called white, but I'm not Korean enough to be, you know, called Korean. And so one of the things that I think that maybe stemmed from that was just, I started embracing the things that made me different, right? So I was like, oh, I'm gonna major in math. And even though I'm gonna be the only social person in the room, no offense to math majors, but you know, I'm oddly social for a math major. I was like, I'm gonna use all of these things to my advantage. And so just being confident and using your uniqueness to your advantage.
Thank you so much. And I think we have some stuff in the chat. So do we want to start? I think Sam has a question. Imposter syndrome is something that we don't discuss so much as first-gen students. How could you cope with the sense of belonging in your current or past institutions, and what keeps you going? Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I have something. So I think one thing that helps a lot is talking with your peers. It's not to say that that can be the only, you know, sometimes talking to your peers isn't really helpful if there's not sort of common ground on this, but I found that especially like in the first 2 years of being in my PhD program, there were many times where I felt like I was alone, and I was like, am I the only one who's having a hard time? And like Erica said, I was like, how's everyone doing really well? Well, now that like my cohort, like my class, we're like all in our third year, and we've passed the courses, we've passed proposals, we're all candidates now. We like go out for drinks, or we'll be talking, and it's funny, we'll have these conversations and we'll be like, oh wait, you were struggling with that too? Oh my gosh, we should have said something to each other. We could have like totally shared knowledge, or even just commiserated. Like sometimes just like commiserating is important because it can be very cathartic just to get it out. Yeah, I mean, I think talking with your peers helps a lot. Also, like therapy helps a lot too. That's something that I've started doing, and thankfully my university, through my healthcare, I have some sort of support there. That's something that helps a lot with imposter syndrome too, because even talking to like professionals who are, you know, already, you know, they're doing their job, they're therapizing. You know, it can be good to sort of have them give you some perspective and help you develop tools to deal with imposter syndrome, because a lot of us go through it, and I think that that's all something it's really important to address.
Thank you. Erica?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, in full transparency, I totally deal with imposter syndrome like all the time. I'm also, maybe this is because I'm in my second year, so maybe I just need to get to candidacy before I start feeling like, oh yeah, like, no, it's honestly one of the hardest things to deal with, especially because coming from Fullerton, like personally, I had such a great supportive community there. And R1s are not as comfy and cozy. And even people in my cohort, I'm a very open person, and I will communicate with a lot of other people. And I found that what worked best for me is finding a few people, one or two, that I could honestly confide in. And so whenever life is just going downhill, I just reach out to these people, and I cried to people. I cried to so many random people over Zoom, because that was my first year of grad school. And I don't know, like, you just kind of rely on each other. And yeah, like, and then, you know, always give other people that opportunity to come to you with that too, right? Because you want to be that person for somebody else too.
Thank you. We have a couple more questions from Andrea and Raquel. Do you have any free time? If so, what do you do? And it kind of leads into the next question, which is like, how do you manage your time efficiently? I think this is from Raquel. I'm always procrastinating, which I know isn't good. Do y'all have any tips on how to stay on track? Anyone?
I still procrastinate. I cannot give you any advice on how to manage your time efficiently. No, I kind of just organize everything that I need to do by priority. And so like with research, I'll break it into small tasks, and then like homework assignments and, you know, midterms and things like that. I'm still in classes. And so I don't know, you just kind of manage your time like that. I will say that grad school is a little bit different with undergrad. Like with undergrad, I felt like I was constantly juggling assignments and exams and just everything. Whereas with grad school, usually you're taking comparatively less classes than you are in your semesters with undergrad. And so I actually do kind of have a lot of free time. So like in the sense that I can kind of manage my schedule where like if I want to take a mental health day and if I just don't want if I don't want to go to class, you know, like I can just do that and I can take that off and, you know, get notes from somebody else. And so I think that that's the hardest thing, is to balance like taking care of yourself, knowing when you need a break, and wanting to, you know, give 100% and show up all the time. That's ideal, but, you know, don't worry if you can't do it. Don't be too hard on yourself. Also, I did buy a $50 Erin Condren planner, which is so nice. It's like this cute little agenda that you can customize. Anyway, I keep track of everything in that because I spent $50 freaking dollars on it. So that's what keeps me organized.
Thank you. We're still figuring it out. No one ever has it down. Janice, Isaac, do you want to add anything?
Sure. Do I have any free time? Yeah. So yeah, similar to what Eric is saying, like grad school is different in that your class load will be lower, but a lot of the things that you're doing are sort of a longer burn. So like I'm kind of past the point where I'm taking any courses really. So now I have 3 or 4 years to basically do my dissertation. And that's one of those things where it can be kind of, it was a really big shift for me, where I was so used to sort of the chaotic scheduling of undergrad and taking 5 courses over the course of like 3.5 months, to now I'm just kind of like, well, I have this really big idea that I'm trying to bring to bring to pass, and there's a bunch of little things. So like today I spent most of my time just reading some papers and like doing some imaging for a manuscript I'm working on, and to some extent, like I look at it comparatively and I'm like, I kind of just sat at my desk and got up and went for coffee, did some work, went to go talk to someone down the hall, did some work. Like it's a different kind of flow. But yeah, I mean, to manage time efficiently, I do the same thing where I just break things down, where if I don't have a list of tasks, it's really easy for me to just like not do anything all day, because I'm like, oh, I think like I was busy, but I don't know what I completed. If I have a list of like, okay, I know these are the figures that I have for my manuscript. Realistically, these figures might take me, 3 weeks to a month to finish. If I like can just do small things, where like, okay, just for today, I'm going to do this particular section of what I need to do, and I can cross it off of my Google tasks, or sometimes I'll just write it on like a piece of stationery. I'm like, if I can just do that, I can see what I've done all day and be like, oh, okay, I didn't just sit idly in front of my computer and like, pretend I was reading and then get distracted on Instagram or something. Like, no, like I actually did do things, and although that is a big part of sometimes what I do during the day, they're keeping track of what you're doing is a good way to sort of remind yourself, I didn't do nothing. Because at the end of the day, like this is a marathon. It's a long burn. It's a long run. there's going to be days where you just feel like I have no idea if I really even did anything, and keeping a task list can be really helpful. And also knowing when to take a break. I have a rule for myself where I don't work past 5. It's not always possible. Sometimes, you know, when you have to do presentations or when you have homework for something, or you have a discussion you're preparing for, you're going to have to work, into the night. But I try to really respect my own time, and that's something where like I have to advocate for myself to myself, where it can be really easy for me just to be like, no, I'm just going to get this thing over with. But I'm like, no, just, you need the break. You're going to feel a lot better. Realistically, what you're going to get done 2 hours, at night is really you can do it within the first 30 minutes of the next day because you're energized. So it's just sort of learning how you work best, and really sort of respecting how you work best, and not trying to force yourself into, this is what I'm supposed to be doing though. I think that that's helped me a lot. Is I know how I work best, and I respect that. And when I need to give myself a break, I give myself a break. So yeah.
Thank you. We're all taking notes over here, by the way. Janice, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I agree. Grad school, in a sense, is a little bit easier in terms of like you're not like taking classes and studying till like 2 a.m. or whatever you would do in undergrad. Like my classes were really easy. It's like we get together, we read a paper, we discuss it. A couple of my classes were like actual exams. And then after those like 2 years, like you have to understand, like the PhD is more about building your critical thinking skills. So like now it's like, what experiments do you need to do to make a figure for the paper that you're publishing, where you're going to answer a question that no one knows. So like yeah, it's a marathon. And like sometimes if you don't learn how to make that switch, like I honestly can say I I struggled with that, like figuring out, like I had friends that maybe their parents were scientists or something, where they already thought like that, like what is figure 1, what is figure 2, what is figure 3, so I can get a publication and like graduate. And for me, I was just still like, oh, I really like this PI. His research is cool. He's making me do this experiment. It didn't work. And so like it like sometimes like advocating for yourself is finding that mentor that's going to help you change your mindset to like match the goals that are going to get you the degree. Because the degree is not, I have 18 more units to take, I need to get A's. Like it's not like that anymore. And then I, went through a lot of stuff this past year. And so like I really made a big effort to like make more time for myself and my mental health. So I now like play soccer like 3 times a week. So I also kind of stop like after 5, like if I have a game, like I plan my day, like I have a game at 6, I have a game at 8, like whatever I have to do, I'm getting out of here so I can go play. Um, and like I'm involved in like a lot of clubs on campus too, where like I'm in leadership positions. And I think it's really important to find a PI or like a boss that allows you to do that, because in academia, like I'm gonna say it, it's toxic. Like a lot of PIs won't want you to do all that stuff. And if you can't find a lab that does the research that you like and a PI that lets you do that, like don't listen to them, because that stuff matters. Because when I applied for the NSF, which I got, which is like a grant that you can get, I wrote about all the extracurricular stuff that I do. So if I didn't do that stuff, I wouldn't have gotten it. So I don't understand how they want you to do both, Um, and there was one more thing I wanted to add, but that's it. It's fine.
Congratulations on your grad. Yay. I'm so excited for you. Sam does have a couple more questions, but one of the ones is like, what do you love about being a PhD student, right? Like, what do you enjoy about your research and your field? And then Natalie's asking, what is your approach in selecting a topic for a thesis or a dissertation?
I can talk about what I love about being a PhD student. I love being in charge of my own schedule. I think it was definitely like a hard transition because I had to learn how to hold myself accountable for things. But again, like having task lists, learning how I work best and catering to that was a big part of doing it effectively. But now I'm at the point where I feel like I have my groove and I know how to really work well within sort of how I work well. Um, and as far as approaching or selecting a topic for thesis/dissertation, uh, exploration. So my program, I don't know if everyone else's experience is like this, but in my program, we don't have to select a lab until after your 2 years. Realistically, most people have an idea of who they want to work, but the school still encourages you to do multiple rotations. And so when I started here, I tried out 3 different labs and did small like projects some were just like processing data or shadowing a graduate student, uh, or a postdoc or something. And I was very just like, I'm here to learn. I'm going to try to figure out if any of this works well with me or is something that I'm interested in. And if you have if you have like a something that interests you that you've never done before, follow that. You know, you don't have to commit yourself right away, but just kind of like, you know, if suddenly for me, like I suddenly became interested in bat evolution. And I was like, I've never like studied bats. I've never heard anything about bats. I'm just going to follow this for a quarter. And I did it for a quarter, and it's not what I ended up doing for my dissertation thesis, but I still like am glad that I spent time doing that because in some way it actually informed what I'm doing now. So yeah, I mean, exploration, I think, is one of the best things you can do if your program is structured in a way in which it allows for that. Mine was, so I was able to check things around, talk to multiple faculties, multiple faculty. Also, like attending seminars is really good too. If you have interesting questions for speakers, or you're like, hey, you said something about this and I thought about this. Has anyone asked this? A lot of times you might get like no one's asked that, or people think that, but no one's ever actually taken the time to do it. That's another good way to sort of figure out topics is just talk to faculty, talk to seminar speakers, talk to your peers. Odds are you're probably thinking of a question that is really interesting, but just no one else has figured out a way to do it. And that's kind of part of what being in grad school is.
I just wanted to say, I didn't say this explicitly, but I love taking weekends off, and I totally do. And I try as hard as I can to not work past 5. I try to do Monday through Friday, 9 to 5-ish. And then, yeah, depending on deadlines and things like that. So I love that. It's interesting because I don't always feel like I have more free time, but thinking about it now, I definitely do. So I go to like concerts and stuff on the weekends with my friends, especially now that COVID is, I don't know, doing whatever it's doing. We're vaccinated and we're fine. And in terms of approaching a topic for your thesis, this one is something that I struggled with a lot, to be honest, because I am a math major and I came into like a math bio program. And I didn't start out in neuroscience. Originally, I was terrified of neuroscience. I was so scared that it was going to be, you know, hard. I knew nothing about it. I never had taken a neuroscience class before. And my program is also structured with rotation. So I just rotated in a neuroscience lab. It wasn't the one that I ended up joining because I actually didn't like the mentorship style, we'll just say, of the PI of that lab. And so I think that that's another important thing too, is don't be afraid to start something new, even if you've never studied it before, like totally give it a shot. And your relationship with your PI matters. A lot of people told me before I started graduate school that liking your PI is more important than what research you're doing, which, you know, it goes both ways. You should ideally you would feel decently about both your research and your PI.
Thank you. Janice, do you want to add anything?
I guess like for me, I just well, I had to switch labs, so that all didn't matter at the end. But I think if you're worried about like what you want to choose your topic, I think that's something that you worry more about when you're already in graduate school. Um, but at least like I kind of had an interest in epigenetics, and I guess like Penn was the only epigenetics like heavy, like they have like a lot of faculty that do it here. That was probably the only thing for me that like wooed me. But I figured everything out once I was here, and like my rotations, I did 3 in my first year, and I just basically finished one rotation and then asked that PI like, who do you think I should rotate with? And then did that. And then on the third one, I kind of did the same thing. And I just played it by ear. Other people will be like planning everything. That just wasn't me. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And that was kind of honestly one of the things that scared me the most about grad school is like, I don't know what schools I want to apply to. I don't know what major I want to apply to. I don't know. Like, I never knew anything, but it still turned out okay.
Yeah, you're there, you're doing it. Is there anything that you want to say that you didn't get to mention before we close out? Anyone?
I I would like to plug something. So, if you are applying to graduate school or applying to summer programs and you want someone to look over your application, there is this like mentorship program that my school started that is like nationwide, and it's called Project Short, and it also is for anyone applying to medical school as well. So if you need like mock interviews or anything basically any medical profession or grad school, they will partner you with someone that is very similar to your background, and then like they'll mentor you, read all of your documents and edit them. So like if that's not like a they're pretty good. Like it grew it like so fast. So like you'll be matched with people all over the country that are graduate students and stuff.
I just wanted to selfishly plug kind of myself and I guess like my team of writers. Well, I'm not the editor-in-chief, but my friend is. You guys should check out the American Mathematical Society grad student blogs. It's just an open space where we get to really talk about anything that we want to. And so a lot of these like opinions and kind of like topics of advice, a lot of the stuff that we talked about today is like kind of topics that you can see in the blog post there. So check it out.
Thank you. Do you mind dropping it in the chat? And Isaac, anything?
No, just if you know, if you have any questions, you can contact me. I think Tatiana, I can drop my email here. But yeah, feel free to contact me via email if you're interested in talking more about what it's like to be a graduate student, the application process or anything like that. I'd be more than happy to lend my perspective on it.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Janice, Isaac, and Erica for being with us today, sharing your stories, being open and honest and, transparent about being a first-gen student, what it's like, and, your experiences in the PhD programs, even and undergrad at Cal State Fullerton too. I just wanted to leave us with the self-affirmations that we mentioned earlier, right? If you are a first-gen student or not, right, these are some things that might be important for us to keep in mind, right? I belong here. The university needs me. I'm doing this for me and my family. Academic success doesn't define me. I'm creating new paths for others like me. So I hope that, we keep this in mind going forward. I know y'all are at the end of the semester, wrapping things up, even though it feels like we have 20,000 more weeks to go. And thank you again. We are so proud of our alum, of all 3 of you and all the great work that you're doing. Please keep us posted. Thank you so much for sharing your contact and with our students and sharing your stories with us today. We're celebrating, right? This is a celebration, right? We're celebrating who and what we're all doing and the work that you guys are doing and where you're at. So we're celebrating with you, no matter where you're at across the country. We're there with you in spirit. Thank you everyone for attending. Please feel free to share any comments or links in the chat as well. I'll put my email in there too if you have any questions. Shonda, we could share information in there, and we'll post this online so people that weren't able to attend could also watch it later too. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you, guys.